Hi, you're listening to the After Hours Skin Clinic with me, Dr Emma Craythorne, consultant dermatologist. Expert skin advice on those questions I'm always asked outside my clinic, in the pub, in the park, and in the playground. In this episode, we're talking SPF, and yeah, you do need to wear it every day. Being a dermatologist takes you to some unexpected places, and the House of Lords is up there. It's like stepping back in time. I was invited to talk to the lords and ladies about the importance of skin cancer awareness for the general population and our use of SPF, sun protection. The UK population is one that particularly and historically has been keen to take advantage of sunny days and blue skies, with about half the population experiencing at least one sunburn every year, and a third of the population keen to tan at any opportunity that they can get. This behaviour, however, comes at a price and is responsible for the 250,000 cases we see of skin cancer in the UK every year. It's also the main driver for why our skin ages early and the endless marketing delivered by the cosmetic industry to further boost this billion-dollar business. One of the questions that was posed to me at the end of the talk was, do I really need to put my SPF on every day if I live in the UK? My short answer is, if you do nothing else for your skin, wear an SPF. Not just to protect your skin from cancer, but to keep your skin looking as young as possible for as long as possible. But I'm sure you're not here for the short answer, so I'll delve into the long answer. So first of all, let's be quite clear. I am completely obsessed with SPF. It's entirely my thing. I've been studying it and treating clinically the impact of UV radiation on the skin for years. I'm fascinated by the formulas, how it works, how and when to apply it, and see the benefits not just across my patients, but my family as well. I'm literally obsessed. But I think that SPF really could do with a rebrand, and we shouldn't really think of it as just protecting ourselves from the sun. It is protecting ourselves from radiation. So I'm just going to concentrate then on UVA and UVB, and this is the radiation that we ultimately want to protect ourselves from. When UVB is in contact with our skin, it actually doesn't penetrate very deeply, but it does have a lot of energy, and that energy is absorbed directly by our cells and damages them, and it causes mutations. And once we have enough of these mutations, well, that is when we develop skin cancer. Ultraviolet A, well, it penetrates deeper into the skin. It's less responsible for giving us a cancer, but what it does do is it early ages the skin. So whenever you see areas of pigmentation and sunspots and wrinkling, broken blood vessels, well, it's the UVA that is responsible for that. And let me tell you, UVA can penetrate. It comes through windows and clouds and clothes and is present from the moment the sun is up until the moment the sun sets. Whereas UVB, it tends to have peaks in the middle part of the day when the sun is at its highest. I've measured the UV in my own house, and my desk, which sits beside an old single pane window, it gets a lot of radiation on it, and we don't even see that much active blue sky or sunshine in London. Even if you never go to the beach or actively try and tan, 80% of that UVA damage that you get, it just comes from everyday activities. So walking to the car or walking in the park, or even me sitting at my desk by that old single pane window. We know that UV is classified as a complete carcinogen. That means there is no debate that this causes cancer. As much as we know smoking can cause lung cancer, this invisible radiation does cause skin cancer. Now, the last thing I want to suggest is that we should be scared of being outside. We should be scared of ultraviolet radiation because being outside is really good for us. We exercise. It's got a very good feel-good factor. We socialise, we gain new experiences, and we relax. All of these things have huge impact on our quality of life, and we should actively be encouraged to do them. But we also are now lucky enough to live in a time where our average life expectancy is going to get to around 80. And that is a lot of years our skin has to look after us and a lot of potentials from these hits of ultraviolet radiation. So it's very important to balance that outdoor way of life with protecting the skin. And we're also very lucky now to live in a time where we have such amazing formulations and clothing that we can wear to protect ourselves in these situations. I'm not going to talk too much about our behaviour adaptations or clothing in this episode, and I'm going to think primarily about the SPF, or the radiation screen as I really want to rebrand it as, and its different formulations. If you look on a bottle of SPF, it'll have a number, and it's really important to realise that that number, whether it says SPF 30 or SPF 50, is really just related to the value of burning on the skin, and that really just relates to the UVB rays. The UVA protection is also incredibly important, and particularly for those people who are a bit worried about their ageing of the skin or pigmentation issues of the skin or conditions like rosacea. And there isn't a very standard way in which we can look at a bottle and say, oh, that's going to give us very good UVA protection, in the same way that we can look at the SPF and see that that's going to give us very good UVB protection. A good tip is to look out for the word broad spectrum, because one way of measuring this UVA is actually with its ratio to the UVB. And therefore, if you do have a higher SPF on the label, then because of that ratio, the UVA protection has to be higher as well. So typically something that's going to be more than an SPF 50 is going to be pretty good for both your UVA and your UVB. You can also do things like sometimes they will put the PPD on the bottle. So that's the persistent pigment darkening. And this measures how protective that sunscreen is against the long-term tan. And it's a bit like a UVA equivalent of the SPF. So the PPD of more than 16, that's considered really optimal. If you look at some of the Asian sunscreens, they will have a PA rating. And for that, you're looking for the 4+ sign. So that equates to this PPD of 16. I mean, I told you that this was complicated, and it's deliberately trying to be complicated. But we have to understand that when we're buying our SPFs, we want to make sure we're using the ones that are going to be most appropriate for our skin. So let's have a think about what would be the best. Ideally, you want an SPF that's going to be SPF 50 plus, broad spectrum, with a PPD of more than 16 and a PA of 4+. So coming on to the question of how do these sunscreens actually work? Well, they're all really a bunch of filters, and they're termed chemical or physical or organic or inorganic. I mean, they're all chemicals really, and trying to split it up into these different sections sometimes just becomes a bit confusing. On social media, there are people who are very keen on using physical sunblocks or mineral filters because they don't want to have any chemicals on their skin. However, these are still chemicals, and actually products like zinc oxide and titanium oxide still have to go through multiple chemical reactions and are often coated in synthetic agents to make them safer on the skin. So there really is no such thing as a chemical-free sunscreen. So what you want to do is revert back to this SPF 50 broad spectrum with a high PPD. Each of these filters that you will see within your sunscreen are better at absorbing certain bandwidths of radiation. So when the ultraviolet comes down towards the skin, the filter absorbs the energy of that radiation and doesn't let that radiation hit the skin. It's almost like an invisible little barrier just sitting over your skin, protecting it. The filter absorbs the energy and converts that energy to a teensy tiny little bit of heat. Not that you would even feel the heat, but it converts energy, this radiation energy, to heat energy, and therefore keeps your skin safe. When we're thinking about the kind of mixture of filters we want, ideally we want a full mix of them that will cover that entire UV spectrum. But also it's really important to understand that actually the filters also protect each other. So that's why you want a full mix and not just something that has one particular chemical in it. When it comes to how you want to use your radiation screen, this really very much depends on the motivation behind it. So if you're thinking that you just want to protect from skin cancer, well, in the UK, you want to be wearing your sunscreen every day from around the middle of March to the middle of October. And you can extrapolate this wherever you are in the world, depending where you are in the world. And you really want to focus your attention towards the mid part of the day whenever the sun is at its highest. If, however, you're trying to treat some other skin conditions such as melasma or rosacea or ageing, or the vast majority of people want to reduce the accelerated ageing of their skin, then you will need to apply your sunscreen, radiation screen, every single day of the year. This is all the way through whether you're deciding to leave the house or not. There was a study that came out probably around about a decade ago now, and it highlighted just by the simple application of daily sunscreen, your skin was 23% younger than the control group at 3 years. I mean, that really is the ultimate better aging cream that there is. If you could pick up a pot like that and you walk through the airport, you would buy it in an instant. But it's already there and it's already available, and that's what your SPF is. So I typically recommend applying your screen in the morning after washing and moisturising your face. The screen goes on and it forms a little film. And as the day goes on, that film starts to break a little bit and the filters start to break down. And that's why it's important to reapply it. Now, unless you're outside a lot, one of the questions I get asked is, how often do I need to reapply this? So in the winter, I say pretty much you just put it on in the morning and you probably don't need to reapply it the rest of the day. You're not getting enough UV really to break it down. Whereas in the summer, I would recommend that you would do a reload at lunchtime and then again actually in the evening if you're planning to be outside for any extended period of time. But if you're in direct sunlight and you're actively holidaying by the beach in the middle of the summer, somewhere fantastic and gorgeous, then it really is every 2 hours that you want to top up your application of your SPF. And like everything, fresh is really best. And as soon as the sunscreen is made up, it actually starts to degrade immediately. So you really do need to pay attention to the use-by dates and be very mindful of how you store your SPF. People will, store their SPF in a car. And in a car, it can get to pretty high temperatures. And it's actually those high temperatures that break down the filters. And that's how people end up being burnt despite applying their SPF. I mean, there's always concerns when it comes to applying chemicals to our skin. And in the world we live in, where multiple non-experts with large followings on social media making, pretty heavy non-evidence-based claims, then these concerns can be intensified and amplified and make people more worried about using SPFs on their skin. And I do hear all of these concerns and worries. But there is no doubt that applying an up-to-date, modern, fresh SPF that's been created is undoubtedly better for your skin than not doing that. There's a concern regarding vitamin D. Will we get enough vitamin D in the UK, if we are applying our sunscreen? And actually, you will still make enough vitamin D. Even if you're on a holiday applying your sunscreen religiously like you're meant to, which nobody does, you will still make enough vitamin D. So the question is, which sunscreens are best? And there is an expression in dermatology that the best sunscreen is the one that you'll actually wear. And that's right. There are more filters and more formulations now than ever before. So if you're somebody who has sensitive eyes or acne-prone skin, or you don't want to look shiny, or you don't like the smell or the feel or the stickiness, well, then just move on to the next SPF because there will definitely be a formulation that suits. I always get asked about the SPFs that I would suggest for people to use. There are so many, the list is endless, but the ones that I really like and can rely upon each time is number 1 from Roche-Posay, the Anthelios range, the UV Immune range particularly. And you can find them in this range for oily skin, for sensitive skin, particularly for children. They also even do a spray format, so you can top up in the middle of the day or spray the top of your scalp with it if you're not wanting to put lotions on it. And I really like this brand as well because it covers a part of the UV spectrum from 380 to 400 nanometers. I realise I'm getting geeky, but this is so important for aging and for pigmentation. And it is the only brand that has this filter. It's patented to them. So if you want to get that whole spectrum right across, then the brand for that is the Roche-Posay Anthelios. Another brand I really like is the Altruist. It's a company set up by a dermatologist, Dr Andrew Burney, and their filters and formulations are excellent. They're also incredibly economic, and you can get a litre of it for a very reasonable price. And as well as that, they have a charitable donation to the Albino Society within African states. Another brand I really like is the Korean brand Beauty of Joseon's. A lot of these Korean filters and formulations really are at the very top of their game, and so they feel beautiful when you're applying them to the skin. They often have quite a nice, gentle smell as well, so people who really don't like that stickiness or the shininess tend to get on very well with these Korean brands, and the Beauty of Joseon stands out for me as one of the top. Whatever it is, and whichever one you prefer, the main thing is you need to love it, and you need to put it on every single day. Well, that's it from me. I hope that you think differently now about SPFs and the new branding of the radiation screen. You can find me in the pub, the park, or the playground, or subscribe and find me here on the podcast. See you next time on the After Hours Skin Clinic.